always loved the law regardless of kind of where I am today. I did in college take an economics class and I got my first C that I had ever received. And I think it just made me want to understand more. I mean, I dove right in and I interviewed for an internship in the finance industry in my junior year, went to New York and have loved it ever since. Didn't turn back. It was kind of having that like kick in the butt. Like I need to figure out, solve this problem and find out how I can do better.
Hello and welcome to Exchange Traded People. My name is Michael Verdon and today's host is Emily Spurling, Global Head of Index at Nasdaq. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Emily, I kind of like to divide the podcast into kind of two parts. The first part is talk a little bit about you so people can, hear and understand a little bit about who you are. And then the second part is to kind of talk about industry and your insights, etc. So I'm going to dive straight into the kind of personal side. And the first question I have for you is, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Great question. I wanted to be a lawyer. So my father was a lawyer. My mother was a psychologist. All I knew was kind of what they did and what they brought home every day. And my father loved his job. And he was a local real estate and estate lawyer. And my plan was to be a lawyer in the future. I obviously didn't end up there, but I will say I still truly enjoy reading through a great merger document.
That's your go-to thing to take on holiday, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So how come you didn't get into the law? How did you, at what point did you kind of realize, yeah, this is not going to happen? And then from there to, the journey to the seat you're in right now.
I always loved the law regardless of kind of where I am today. I did in college take an economics class in my junior year, no, actually my sophomore year, and I got my first C that I had ever received. And I think it just made me want to understand more. I mean, I dove right in. I turned it around completely. I loved economics, which then, over time turned into more financially related courses where they were offered. And I interviewed for an internship in the finance industry in my junior year in college, went to New York and have loved it ever since. Didn't turn back. So it was kind of having that like kick in the butt. Like I need to figure out, solve this problem and find out how I can do better.
And I was quickly looking through your LinkedIn profile. So you started your career at JP Morgan, was it?
Yes. So I started at JP Morgan. I worked in the financial planning and analysis group for 1 year and then moved over to the investment bank, focused on mergers and acquisitions in the financial institutions and governments world. Ironically, I covered exchanges at the time. So I now work at Nasdaq. So the journey is kind of complete, but I worked there. I did the investment banking analyst role for 3 years and then moved into private equity. And so my second phase of my journey was in private equity and venture capital until business school.
So how does somebody go from private equity into the world of indices?
Great question. So actually it's very similar. It's kind of portfolio management, portfolio understanding, portfolio diversification. I went into private equity, focused on kind of the mid-market space, really did a lot of work where I was directly involved with the company in understanding how to operationalize and get those companies ready for their next exit or going public, et cetera. And that meant I really understood a lot about operating a business, which comes into play later. Then I moved into venture capital, where you're more looking at opportunities, multiple opportunities leading to 1 or 3 or 5 big ones. And then I went to business school. And coming out of business school, I networked around amongst the network that I had made and found a role at Nasdaq, where I joined Nasdaq in the corporate strategy and M&A team. So I was actually continuing my journey of focusing on kind of that investment private equity space. While in that role, I also was able to see through and understand the different business lines at Nasdaq, and eventually found myself just loving the investment index solutions and analytics space. So I moved into a strategy, finance, and operations role covering the index business, our data business, and our analytics business, and just found that the index business itself was a high growth pillar for Nasdaq, and also one where you could jump in, you could figure out the strategy for growth, understand the landscape, and drive a great path forward. So a lot of what I learned in terms of operationalizing a business, getting it ready for growth and kind of the future opportunities, as well as portfolio management and portfolio diversification, and kind of sometimes figuring out the big wins, but also making sure you get as many out there as possible, fits really well with an index business.
So you've been at Nasdaq for what, 10 plus years now?
I have. I've been at Nasdaq for 10 years this September. So in about a month.
So that's a pretty good stint. Like what has kept you there for so long?
Adina and the culture. The culture at Nasdaq is one that is very differentiated from other places that I've seen. So coming from the very financial investment space, that's a different culture, but also the companies that I worked with were very different cultures. Nasdaq is all about innovation, all about kind of problem solving and figuring out how you can drive a growth path forward, and transitioning, taking advantage of the new technologies that are out there and the new opportunities, and figuring out how to make that work for us and for our clients. And all of that experimentation, all of that innovation is wildly supported across the business because of how Adina has built what we're trying to do as a business. And it's a very collaborative and enjoyable place to work. And I will admit that was not the plan. So it was not the plan to stay at Nasdaq, and it quickly changed because
it never is, right? It never is.
It never is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, because often, people they don't look enough at culture when they're looking at new opportunities, right? They look at the name of the brand, the company, the salary, the job title,
Yes.
and ignore culture, which is always like a massive mistake, because if the culture doesn't fit with you as a person, then it's only going to end in tears, right?
Exactly. And it also allows you to attract such a diversity of talent. If you have a great culture that embraces change, embraces innovation, you are going to bring in such great people to be on your team together. And I have to say that the brand has evolved so much over the past 10 years that now the brand is a big part of why I want to be here as well. So it has changed a lot in the 10 years, a lot.
Cool. So when you sit here now, like chatting to me, and you kind of think about your career and look back at it, what are the kind of the big learning points that you've taken from your career, and what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
So much advice. So I would say that there is a limit to perfection. You do not need to get to perfection before you can put yourself out there, take a new role, take on a new opportunity, work with other teams. You do not need to fall into the place of needing to know everything before you do a new thing. And I think that I read Abby Wambach's book, Wolfpack, and one of the phrases that I loved from that book was, "You're more powerful than you think." So, you don't have to read everything. You don't have to have all of the knowledge. So much has been accumulated in what you've done as your job for so many years, and the people you've interacted with, that you can bring a lot to the table right away. So just put away perfection, dive in, and try to solve a problem.
Would you consider yourself to be a perfectionist?
Yes, but I have figured out ways. I think maybe perhaps having 3 small boys has thrown that out the window entirely. There is no perfection. You have to embrace it. And I think also one of the things I've very much learned is ask a ton of questions. A lot of what we're trying to do is solve problems for our clients and help our teams grow and develop. And the best way to figure out a path forward is just asking a lot of questions.
That's a really good one, because I think a lot of times, and I put myself into this category as well, you feel afraid. You don't want to be stupid. Like to ask, if I ask this, I'll appear stupid. You just there's no such thing as a stupid wall. Maybe there might be, but generally not, right?
Exactly. Just ask all the questions, and sometimes even ask the questions when you know the answer, because it helps other people travel that journey with you. So I really think asking questions is just core. It is something I would give myself, my prior self advice, my future self advice, and all the other people that I interact with.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Cool. Okay, so moving on to kind of like, the industry and how you perceive things right now. So like the index space specifically. So how is the role of an index provider evolving as more investors kind of demand more customization, and technology is evolving as well? So what's going on there?
First and foremost, being an index provider that actually ourselves takes advantage of the newest technologies, that's a big part of being at Nasdaq as well. Constant understanding of the new technologies that are out there to help us get better, to help us be able to provide better services to our clients, to use AI and other solutions to help with data anomaly detection, index ideation, all the things that our clients need to differentiate themselves. We can do this at scale and provide services to others if we embrace new technology along the way. So I think that's vitally important. I think absolutely right. Customization, personalization in the investment industry is continuing to evolve and continuing to be a mainstay of what you have to provide as an issuer. And what we're doing is enabling our issuers to provide that to their clients. So the more that we can focus on the ability to create unique solutions for our clients to bring to market, and importantly, help them create the knowledge and understand how best to bring that to market. So a lot of market analytics, investor data and analytics helps our clients reach the investors that they are trying to reach better. So I would say take advantage of technology, help with customization and personalization through the solutions we provide, and then help drive growth over time by utilizing analytics that are unique and differentiated.
Nasdaq is known for innovation. So what's the next wave of index innovation we should be looking for? Is it more in the crypto space, private assets, AI-driven strategies? What are you seeing?
All three of those things are very true. And what I have loved about Nasdaq is we often have these things before they become the fad in the market. So we've had AI themed and AI generated indexes since 2018. We're starting to see a lot of traction in them now from both an investor interest in gaining access to companies that are taking advantage of those technologies, but also utilizing AI to understand massive data sets and connect different elements to provide an outcome for a client. So both of those we've had in market for a while. I think the continued convergence between private and public is absolutely a trend in this space. And how do we provide the right ability for investor transparency and access in that type of solution where you can gain access to private assets in a way that still has the transparency around pricing and information that's necessary. And sorry, you know what? I didn't answer crypto. And I think that that's very important. I think the digital assets landscape is continuing to evolve, and the ability for an index provider to come in and provide a broader based benchmark solution in the crypto space is very important. For those looking for access to that growth and performance, but also for those looking to diversify the holdings they may have in digital assets, right? If you have a broad-based solution, you're kind of creating the same thing as the Nasdaq 100, but with the underlying asset being a digital asset.
Right, yeah. ETFs have they're shifting from being more passive to more active now. So how does that evolution impact a firm like Nasdaq?
We absolutely want to be a part of that evolution in multiple ways. I mean, an index can always be a benchmark for how that active product is performing, but also oftentimes what we're seeing in active strategies is our underlying indexes are a part of that strategy. So a lot of the options-based solutions that deliver a certain outcome or income stream for clients utilize the Nasdaq 100 as its base index in the construction of the product. So we're absolutely a part of that evolution. And I think there will be more and more opportunities as we see that evolve in the landscape.
I'm sure, absolutely. Like Nasdaq is a global business, so how does demand how does index demand differ between the US, Europe, and Asia? Are there regional trends to customization or product structure or anything else that you see?
I think we've seen trends evolve differently across the different regions. I would say it's also a process of ETF adoption. So I think we saw quite a bit of ETF adoption in the US over the past 10 years, and that is really starting to take hold in EMEA. And we're continuing to see new strategies become popular in the ETF wrapper. So I think some of it is just the adoption of the structure itself in the markets that we serve. And you start with, if you look at the US evolution, it started with broad-based beta and evolved into more thematics and factors. And now it's in systematic strategies and active solutions. We're kind of seeing that evolution go a bit faster in the new markets like EMEA and APAC, where the ETF adoption is also kind of facilitating some of the opportunities in active and systematic strategies faster than we would have seen in the US over that evolution. I think that's the pace of change globally everywhere. Things happen faster.
Yeah, no, definitely. But as an index provider, like you mentioned, you had the AI indices since 2018. So as like your kind of product team, like they're kind of, to a certain extent, they have to be visionaries, right? They have to kind of anticipate what's going to happen before the issuers kind of get to that point, right?
Yes, well, we hope to. Absolutely. And we do. We actually have a process internally that we call a qualified pitch, which is we have looked at the landscape. We've thought of emerging trends based on data that we have access to as a broad market, right? We're operating markets. We have teams that bring in external data sets, et cetera. And we're doing a ton of research to understand investor demand in different markets, and then what our different issuers' profiles look like and what they're good at in the market, and how do we bring something to them that's unique and differentiated that perhaps isn't the third thing of its kind in the market, but the first thing of its kind. And so, yeah, it's kind of, I guess, some of our secret sauce. We like to think ahead.
There I was thinking that you all sat there with a big magic kind of ball or something, but clearly not. A data-driven approach.
It's a great benefit to be a part of a market. So the operating capital markets, you see trends as companies are going public. You'll see trends across different industries, like what companies are kind of reaching the size and capability to go public. We are also constantly engaged with the private space to understand, who do we need to get to know better? What industries are kind of evolving faster than others, and what technologies are driving different industries faster? So we see that far before it makes its way to the public markets. And then we can kind of think about that structure from a forward perspective of, okay, once enough of these make it to the market and once enough of this technology takes hold, it's going to be a trend in the investment space. It's going to take hold. So how do you think about that ahead of time?
You mentioned Europe a while ago. So clearly, like in terms of like ETFs, Europe is seeing a lot of growth, a lot of new entrants coming to market. So how is Nasdaq positioning itself to support that growth?
Well, we've actually invested a lot in putting more people locally. Like, you want to think globally, but act locally. So we have a lot of people now in EMEA focused on the index business. We obviously have a lot of people at Nasdaq in EMEA that understand, again, trends and opportunities in the capital markets. And now we have a big presence with our index business. I also think a big part of the story that we can help in EMEA is helping people understand the investor base, the investor appetite, and analytics on that investor base. Because one of the disruptive aspects of an ETF structure is that you're bifurcating the relationship between the issuer and the end investor. By listing on an exchange, the issuer no longer has that kind of direct knowledge and understanding of who their client base is. And Nasdaq, as an operator of markets, as a data provider, et cetera, has a lot of opportunity to bring unique value to issuers to help them better understand how to target audiences and know what their investor base is looking for. So we're excited about the different partnerships and opportunities we can bring to play there.
So we just kind of, like I joked about like crystal balls there a second ago, but if you look into your crystal ball right now, where do you see like the index provider space developing in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think the greatest developments, I think we've touched upon quite a bit. It's the convergence of public and private, the ability to provide continued access and transparency to asset classes or domains that were not previously accessible via this structure. I mean, it's one of the great things that an ETF structure actually did. It democratized access to market trends in a way that everybody had immediate ability to buy and invest in. And we will continue to see that span out across new asset classes and opportunities. And I think the biggest thing to remember is that structures often disrupt themselves. So continue to understand what the trends are, what the opportunities are, what the driving factors are behind investor decisions from a structure perspective, and be out in front of that. And we would be partners with our clients on that road.
Last question from me. So hypothetical one. If, like, let's suppose like money was not a determining factor for you. If you weren't doing what you do now, what would you do?
Oh, so perhaps I could do more of what I do. So I think what I would love is to continue to expand in terms of the solutions that you put together. And there's so many things in Nasdaq that you can fit together and provide a broader solution to clients. And I think I love running the business, and I love the space. I love portfolio diversification and portfolio management. So if I could do anything, I guess I'd run more of Nasdaq. Is that fair?
Run more of that. Okay. So I'll come back in 20 years' time and you'll still be running Nasdaq. Yeah.
Right. Or that, or the chief strategy officer for NVIDIA.
Okay, cool. Emily, this is a blast. I've learned a hell of a lot more about index businesses than I knew at the beginning. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been delightful. I appreciate it.